Hi everybody, it's Robbie from Southern California. Today I'm going to show you how I made this adorable fountain that, well, I'm not going to tell you if the birds like it or not. I want you to watch the video, how I put this together, and I'm going to put together so many more that if you want to watch me put lots of different solar fountains together, go ahead and subscribe and you'll get that little ding if you hit that bell every time you see me put up a new fountain. But this one is now one of my favorites. Let me show you how I put this together with found materials in my house that I think most of you will have. So I had this old watering can that I used to water my house plants with, over 30 years old, and I decided to do something with it. It's kind of falling apart a little. So I used my soldering iron, as I always do, and I made a hole large enough to put in some tubing that will fit my solar fountain kits. And the tubing, I wanted it to slide into the spout of the watering can. So instead of filling it up with water, it would tip and pour where I wanted it to pour. So the tubing fit in perfect. So you saw where I made the hole. And I had certain components I found around the house. So I had my watering can, which has got the hole, and I painted it up a little bit, just a little bit, give it more color. And I used a food jar that I had, like a peanut butter cup or a coffee jar, and then a trash can that was BPA free. You could use a bucket. And what I wanted it to do was to run on the top, that the watering can would run on the top. Now the reason I wanted to use this cap is it's rough and it's got that little edge which would bring in hummingbirds, because I always try to target the hummingbirds. And you can use a peanut butter jar or a coffee jar. Now I had these things, I don't know what they are, they're like heavy little tiles. They feel like rock, and we found them in the soil here when we bought the house, and Gary dug them up, and he's got like a 5-gallon bucket of them. So if you know what they are, let us know. But we washed them up and we've got them in a bucket. We're saving them, and I'm going to use them here for weights. I could have turned the jar over and used either side, but the bottom was shiny and smooth, and I want it to be rough so the birds can land on it. I also decided I was going to make a perch, which would bring the birds as well. Just in case, though, because I was making holes for the perch, I wanted to make sure if any water got in there, it would drain out. I didn't want it to fill with water, so I put a couple little holes on the bottom of this food container jar. And the perch is where I want to kind of make some holes in it so I can have birds come through. The main thing was right now to get a little weight in it so it won't come off the chip tray I've got here, this fancy chip tray. Now the chip tray goes on top of the bucket, which is a trash can, and that's going to be my water reservoir. But I need that full of holes, because when this tray gets full of water, I want to make sure it doesn't overflow. And the main thing is to make sure all the water goes back into the bucket with the flow of the solar fountain kit. So I filled it with holes, and this is exactly the way I wanted it. So the water will pour on the top and go inside the bucket, not overflow. So I really need more holes than less. Now going back to the food jar, I need to make some holes that will hold the perch. And the perch is to invite birds to come check it out and sit. So I use my soldering iron, which I absolutely love it. I use it for everything, to make a hole so I can get the perch in. You can use any size perch. Could have gotten a bigger perch if I wanted to. Kind of looked to see where it was going to go on the other side. I made a little hole, pulled out the perch, and then I made the hole big enough with my hot soldering iron so I can slide the perch in very snugly so the birds can land on it and they won't slip. And it worked perfect. Really slid in there good, and that's it. Now it was just a matter of setting it all up and putting the cap back on. And it's going to sit on top, and the water is going to drain, and the birds will have a place to come check out the water fountain. That's all you need, is just look around the house, see what you've got. Now the tubing has to be inside. This is very different than what I usually make. Normally the tubing's coming up, but now the tubing's coming out. So I had to make a hole on the side of my bucket. That's why I couldn't use anything glass, because I can't make holes in glass that good. So I made a hole on the side of the bucket, and make sure it's cool before you test it. You know, put your tube through. But once it's cool, you can slide the tube through, and that's what I did. And now the rubber tubing is going to go all the way to the bottom where the solar kit's going to be, the pump. Now I also need a notch because when the tray sits on top, I want it to be flat, sit real flat. So I kind of figured out, well, I'll put the notch here. And I kind of made like a V notch into the plastic. Just enough though, really, so the cord will be underneath the tray. I don't want it to push the tray up. This way the tray will sit nice and flat. That's really all you needed to do. It was that simple. And that's the hole for the tubing, and that's how flat it's going to sit once the cord is through it. And that's going to sit on top for the hummingbirds. Now, if I wanted it for any other birds, I wouldn't have to do anything else. I could have left it just the way it is and have it pour into the tray and it would work. But I'm targeting hummingbirds. Now, this is the solar fountain kit. It comes with all the little trinkets, but we don't need it. I only need the part that's going to put the tubing onto the pump. And my tubing was a little bit tight, so I used a hot glue gun to stretch it. And it will slightly melt it and stretch it. And then that little clip that's going to go into the pump, I can push on that little part there and put on the tubing. And now this will fit perfect on the solar fountain pump. And that's how easy it is to use if it's a little bit tight. It comes with a couple little pieces. It might be like a puzzle. You have to figure it out, but that's it. Now I'm ready to go. It's all set up. It's just a matter of dropping the pump inside the bottom of the bucket. And when I get outside, I'm going to make sure it's on the notch. And so I went outside and I had a flower pot on the ground. I thought, this is perfect. It's got some mint growing out of it. I'm going to sit it on top of the flower pot and get it off the ground. And now it's just a matter of setting it up. I had a hook that you would hook like a hummingbird feeder on. So I hooked on my watering can. And I figured that was enough tubing. And it was about 2 feet of tubing I needed. So I cut the tubing so I can slide it back into the watering can. Now remember, measure twice, cut once. But, you know, I had enough tubing if I didn't measure right. So I slid it in, like I showed you in the house, into the spout. And now it was just a matter of adjusting it the way I wanted it. And see, I could have left it for big birds. But again, I'm looking for hummingbirds to come check this out. Because they like little things with shallow water that they can sit on. And that was it. It's all set up. It was a matter now of just filling it with water. I just use my hose. That's the way I use the water here. Our water is good to drink, so it's fine for the birds. And remember, they're drinking out of sprinklers and different places too. And now the jar goes right underneath the spout of the watering can. So in theory, it's going to pour on the watering can. It's going to trickle down and go into the tray and into the bucket. And it works. Look, I was so excited. It was perfect. It worked exactly the way I wanted it to work. And then I used some masking tape and I quickly taped the solar panel onto a tomato stake so I can get it up. I usually get fancier now with my stakes, but for now I wanted to get this thing up. I can go back later and change that. And I just stuck it where the sun is, and that's it. And now it is ready to set up and see who is going to come check out my fountain. So there it is. It was that easy. An old watering can I had from so many years ago. A chip tray that I found. A trash can that you could use a bucket instead or a big bowl. And then a jar, a peanut butter jar, or if you want, you can use a coffee jar. Same thing, same type of lid. And you can put together with a few items a beautiful fountain. And let me tell you something, with this splash that you see, if you don't like bees, the bees won't like this one. The bees look for something that has a smooth waterfall to it. That's what they like to hang out on. But when it's got a splash, the bees don't like it. But this will bring all kinds of birds. And if you don't have hummingbirds, you don't need to put the center little jar there. You won't need it because the birds will go in that bowl and splash without it. But as you know, I have thousands of hummingbirds. I cater to hummingbirds. So I always think out of the box, how am I going to make these hummingbirds come to all my different bird baths that I want them to come visit. So I hope I gave you some ideas on how to build a really fun solar bird bath. You could always add in some rocks if you want, and I plan on making a whole bunch more. Have a wonderful day, and don't forget to eat what you grow. Bye-bye, everybody. So cool.